just recording it.
All right. It is a little after 6, so I think we're good to start. It's my pleasure to introduce Ryan Collins, who's going to share some of his work with us tonight in honor of National Poetry Month. Ryan's the executive director of the Midwest Writing Center, an English instructor at St. Ambrose University. He's the author of A New American Field Guide and Songbook and 5 poetry chapbooks. His work has appeared widely in anthologies and journals, and his poems have most recently appeared in Apartment, Crazy Horse, Sync Review, and Two Peach. He hosts the Spectra reading series in Rock Island and a whole bunch of other really cool things that he will talk about. Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming out. Appreciate y'all. Thank you, Claire, very much for asking me to do this, since I kind of haven't done this in a super long time. One of those chapbooks, we're gonna, like, all these tickets were, like, if you don't know, one of those chapbooks, which is now 10 years old, it's growing up, little baby, that I found when I was moving, so it was kind of neglected. We're gonna raffle some of those off at the end, so if you don't have a ticket, get one. Free chapbook, yeah, all locally produced. Yeah. Before I get into the reading stuff, I'm gonna do the executive director thing, and I was gonna say put on the hat, but I got the Bulls hat on because the Bulls play later tonight.
It doesn't come off.
You gotta represent. It will not tonight, no. Until they lose, in which case, it's 86 the hat. So we got a bunch of stuff for the Writing Center up here. We're getting into summertime. We have a lot of stuff going on. Actually, tomorrow night, the MWC Press, our press imprint, we have a new anthology coming out. There's a few contributors to said anthology in here. It's at Galvin Fine Arts. It's at 6 p.m. That's on the campus of St. Ambrose University. Show up. One of the first 100 people there, you get a free copy of the anthology, courtesy of Quad City Arts and their Arts Dollars grant program. So come check that out. Come get a free book and see some awesome readings. We're taking applications for YW, our summer internship program. We're looking for staff for that too. So if you know people who are into that kind of thing, 15 to 19-year-olds for the interns, older kids for the staff. And then we do a camp in the summer. We're looking staff for all that kind of stuff. If we do a conference, most of y'all know this, I'm just gonna move on. But all that stuff is up there. Check it out, grab some bookmarks, some stickers, get some swag. Cool. So, poet hat. That looks suspiciously like my wobbly Bulls hat for my wobbly Bulls. It's like, it's playoff season. It's like getting on the basketball holy season. So, yeah, I observe. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. I haven't done any readings in a long time. And just to kind of preface all of this, like, I haven't really, some of you know this, but I haven't really done a lot of, like, writing poems and poetry related activities, other than for the Writing Center and stuff like that, obviously. But for me, my stuff for the last, like, 2.5 years, Poetry Land has been not a place I've spent a lot of time. And so all these poems are new, so if you've seen me read before, I'm not dusting off any oldies or anything like that. Everything is new, so if you have negative reactions, please feel free to share them. I can use the feedback. Nobody's heard these other than Kate, my partner, who can't be here because she's working at Von Mar, doing that thing, and a few people that I was in a workshop with. So earlier this year, the Writing Center, we went to the AWP conference in Kansas City, and that was that's always a good boost for thinking about poetry and writing poems. And then I took a workshop on like a reading and writing workshop on Jack Spicer through the Lighthouse Writers Workshop, which is a really cool organization. It's based out of Denver. They do a lot of remote workshops, so if you're interested, kind of like we do, a little bit bigger scale, they've got an amazing roster of writers that work with them. So I took a workshop through there. Jack Spicer, if you don't know, was time-wise a contemporary of like the New York School, Black Mountain Poets, like all that kind of like mid-50s, early 60s era that was so rich in American poetry, but was like a little bit lesser known, was very kind of local and stayed in the Bay Area. But his work posthumously has sort of flourished and come into a much wider audience. And it was very close to my heart, something that I read a lot of in grad school and spent a lot of time with. And so I figured maybe going back to that work in a sort of workshop environment with a bunch of strangers and with a really excellent teacher, poet by the name of Elizabeth Robinson, who I encourage. I'm going to be shouting out a lot of poets, so if you're looking for recommendations, it's Poetry Month. Like, I know it's supposed to be me reading my poems, but that's a long time to read just my poems, so I'm going to read some poems by some other people. I'm going to try to shout out as many presses and things like that as I can, so if you're not kind of hip to what's going on right now in American poetry, maybe this is like a little bit of a window for that. I think that would be cool. And then, like I said, you can throw tomatoes or whatever you've maybe brought with you for my work. So yeah, like, so all these poems are super new. All these have come since like Kate and I moved in December to a new house, which was kind of like a weird, terrible experience. Those of you who have dealt with that, like, it's nice to have a house. Going through the process of trying to get a house is kind of awful, and it's weird to me that people say congratulations. So, like, that's like a language tick I've been like thinking through, and yeah, some other personal things that I won't get into. So it's been a weird year, but it's nice to get back into poetry, and it's really nice to be here with all of y'all to read. So I'm gonna get into that. And as I said, I'm gonna not read one of my poems to start out with. I'm gonna read one of Jack Spicer's poems to start out with, because I feel like it's just been so influential in my work, and like coming back to this work in that context was like really generative and really meant a lot. And if Elizabeth ever sees this recording, I don't know what we're doing exactly, but I can't thank you enough. Like, all these poems are sort of for you and because of you, so I'm really grateful. Thank you, Elizabeth. I hope I get to study with you again in the future. So the first poem I'm going to read is a Jack Spicer poem, and he wrote a lot of like series of poems, which is also a thing that I'm very interested in, like serial poetics. So this is from a book of his called 15 False Propositions Against God. And all the poems are numbered, and it's very short. So I'm going to read, this one's number 5. I'm going to read this, and then we'll kind of go from there. When the house falls, you wonder if there will ever be poetry. And you shiver in the timbers, wondering if there will ever be poetry. When the house falls, you shiver in the vacant lumber of your poetry. Beauty is so rare a thing, Pound sang. So few drink at my fountain. Yeah, just like all the puns. And yeah, I mean, we don't have to do, we can like save all that for the end. And like at the end too, like, you know, we can do like questions, like I want to talk poetry. I don't want to just like read poems at you. I want to like have a conversation. So hopefully we can do that too. So this is the first poem that kind of started to come out of all of this that I kind of felt good about. And it's a poem in 3 parts. And it's called Solar Blasphemy. 1. Too direct a provocation today the sun makes of itself. Clouds dose out its radiation in asides, more parenthetical, less ellipsis. The awful continuing keeps our dancing contained, a threat to more than the municipal peace, more than unkempt, swept clean off the face of the window with spots of our dried breathing, the salts of our bodies purified by terrible leaving, plates of sawdust smeared in hair grease, windows of bone refusing the sun. 2. Pulling the self out of the referential, pulling aside. No, you cannot ask with whom you are speaking. You can ask, but don't expect to be left alone. Alone, son. A lonesome shadow kisses the storefront window, and not even the reflection kisses back. Kiss the air and not what you see, dispossessed of mystery. You can ask whatever you like. You can be referred back. A reference book and a lonesome storefront window. You can ask your reflection anything you like. You cannot ask your shadow what secrets it tells to the window before the kiss. The secret shape of its true desire, its desire for shape, self-referential, set aside, pulled out of the sun. 3. Return to yourself, the awful continuing, our faces pressed on either side of the window, no one outside. Our kisses smeared on the double pane of time, a no-way mirror looking in on ourselves, sad and paternal, where an ocean should be only sand, only soon to be glass nothing will be seen through, sawdust. You can see me and I can't see you, only the shadow of your breath captured on the window by air, awful continuing. Smeared like kisses neither of us can remember. We ask to whom we are speaking, no answer, followed by an ellipsis. Dancing contained, doused, set aside, in a salt ring around time, left to disappear like a shadow, a kiss from the sun. So I'm gonna read another poem by Not Me, which you should be excited about. This is one of Elizabeth's new book. Elizabeth has a bunch of books and has like a couple that came out in 2023 and I think some more that are on the way. Just an extraordinary poet. Like if you're not familiar with Elizabeth Robinson, like take this as your, all good. Take this as your introduction. I'm really grateful if I get to be to introduce you to her work. So this is a book called Excursive. It was published last year by Roof Books. Definitely, if you're gonna buy books right now, especially if you're buying poetry books from small presses, one of the big distributors of small press publishers in the United States, an outfit called Small Press Distribution, fittingly, shuttered very suddenly, very recently, and put a lot of small presses in a bad way. So if you're gonna buy books right now, please buy books from poets, writers, buy books from their publishers. If you can't buy them direct from the poets and writers, if you can't buy them direct from the publishers, buy them from your local bookstores. Don't buy them from Amazon, okay? Like for real, just don't do that. And Roof Books is a really terrific press. They publish a bunch of really amazing poets. You should definitely check them out. So I'm gonna read one poem from this book that I really love. It's from like almost the end of the book. It's called Everything is like on youth. This one is on X equals in quotes. One long ongoing phrase that tucks in its many false starts until the contradictions lay lip to lip and decide not to self-cancel as the film of sweat crystallized its own salt and the moving limbs took on a sheen, button pushed back and forth through its hole, stutter or better sleep talk, not backwards in time, but two incisions made diagonally, and the skin magically puckers, for they were no edges, they were lips, arms flexed before the body, the lacings of the shoes crossed, and the loosening, and as long as grammar had seemed hopeful, the sentence had transubstantiated into words. Lapses in order were not lapses in flow, but the erotic pink of the scar, whose healing was a tangle in every instance, in every recurring loss of the grain of salt to the tongue, a securing two stitches whose X models intersection over breach, movement where nothing is equal, almost invisible, wound cut uncut to rhythm. I love poems that are one sentence, and that one right now is my favorite one. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope Elizabeth, if you hear that, I hope that was acceptable. Holy shit. So I'm gonna read two poems from a series. The first thing that we read in Elizabeth Spicer workshop was an early book by Spicer called The Admonitions, and those are all poems that are like for people that he knew. They're like for you get the first name, like for John, for Steve, whatever. And so I started writing something kind of similar to that, and these are all dedicated to people. I'm going to read two of them. They're all dedicated to people that I know. They're all 14 lines. I would call them sonnets. If you don't consider them sonnets, maybe we can rap about that after the reading. If you want to play nice, we can do that. Some people get heated about this stuff. If you don't know about poetry, this is a thing that some people get very heated about. And say embarrassing things on the internet about. We are recording this, so if you don't want to say anything embarrassing that might be available in posterity, don't. In any event, so yeah, I'll read 2 of these. We'll just keep it trucking. A lot of these are kind of sonnet or sonnet-ish, sonnet-y. So this one is for a friend of mine named John, Jon, and some of them have subtitles in the parentheses. And so the subtitle for this one is Winchester Mystery House, if you know where that is in California, and all that haunting, good weird stuff. So for John, Winchester Mystery House. The lightning crack of pain, a neighborhood where you and I own properties on several streets. A house for every knuckle, screaming toward a glottal stop. How long until all this sawdust sees the sweep of our brooms? In our mansion, there are many rooms littered with lumber, rotten plumbing, stairs leading up to nowhere. Each door frame a portal, even if opening only into a wall. Not a stop or dead end, an opening into magic, the hidden unfinished. This next one is for Sarah. That's Sarah, right there, this person. Hi, Sarah. For Sarah. Any soft place to rest your head, a miracle. Impatience is understandable given the lack of breaths remaining. Sheepish and frantic, going from room to room, but the house empty. Nowhere to sit inside or out. Outside, the future furniture awaits, like us, hoping the forces contorting us through the days are benevolent. Unlike sheep, we're untrustable, unable to adjust our eyes to benevolence. No furniture is miraculous, a glossary, but from miracles we're able to rearrange. Yeah, this next one, not a sonnet, surprisingly enough. So this is I wrote 2 poems at once, and kind of like this long poem. I'm like kind of maybe splitting them up. So I've got these 2 sort of sibling poems that have the same title, and I'm going to read them both. And I'm going to read the first one now. They're both called Air Traffic. Squint hard enough before the morning is full, and maybe see what squints back through the ravine and sentinel trees, cold and ready not to be full of morning, ready to be tapped. After how many weeks of years can we tap out? Say, uncle, catch a highball glass before it falls and achieves brokenness, a more natural state of being. How exhausting to hold ourselves together when we brave the world each morning. And for what? We can't see who's watching, no matter the time of day, no matter the squinting. Squat down for the air traffic, trying to hold together over neighborhoods and rivers and the trees, who catch all of our secrets and reassemble them into minerals underground. We cannot see this process, but know our secrets belong not entirely to us. Ears to the grass, we can hear what might be scratching the dead, busy in the earth, unconcerned about mourning or catching anything that falls. Let it all break and return to being full. We're mostly made of empty space and filled by days to the point of bursting. Fat trees refusing to be tapped. Our emptiness sapped of its sentinel power, drawn from outside of time's crystal set, drawn from the underground where the dead keep us busy as electrons. Parched, throat's parched. Nobody? Inside Man? Nobody's a fan? It's a great Spike Lee movie, you should check it out. Your throat's parched? This one is sort of modeled, if you know John Berryman and the Dream Songs, this is sort of modeled after a Dream song, minus the problematicness and the kind of polyvocal stuff. And it's sort of an argument about love. It's called Bound. Obligation might be a means to love, but it's not the end. The end always a means to love, embraced by a lonesome horror. Coming home to not find a stranger rifling through the junk drawer. Obligation a certain end, like receiving an open scissor arm or bad drugs. Loneliness, something like the end, but not quite, says love. So hard to hear over the howling moon. Love the only obligation. Love says lonely. The means sheared off, drowned out by the moon. Drugs don't help the listening, good or bad. No stranger will find you coming home. No stranger will save your lonely, howling love. An obligation in everything to the end. In everything to love an end. A lonesome open. Yeah, okay, yeah, Sonnet City, cool. So, sonnets, 14-line poems-ish. Are they rhymed? I don't know. We'll see, maybe, somewhat. And these, like, all of these poems are sort of like, I don't have a name or a title for everything yet, but like all of these are sort of like a big series, or they're all sort of interrelated. So if you're hearing like a lot of repetition or like things developing or images that are reoccurring, like, good. You're supposed to. That's at least what you get from that. I know what my intended effect is, but like what you're getting from it, I don't know. But if you're noticing that at least was part of the idea. And so like one of the things that I've been thinking about, like coming up with titles is not my favorite thing in the world, nor something I'm good at. I wrote a whole book with almost every poem had no title, which is a neat trick. I highly recommend. If you don't like writing titles, so like I said earlier, like the whole like congratulations thing is like weird. I think I get that it's well-meaning, but it's also strange. And so I was like thinking about hexes, and I was like one of the titles I was kind of like kicking around was like the idea of like congratulations as a hex. Like when people like say things that they don't, like it's like I hope you live forever. Like if someone says that to you, they probably don't mean you well. Like that might sound really cool and nice in like a superhero way, but you need to consider like the logistics of that. That is generally thought of in the circles that I've been fortunate to pass through. That's not a nice thing. You don't want someone to say to that. They're probably not wishing you well. So I was thinking of like some of these like have like different like names for hexes and stuff like that. So this one is Constellation Hex. All the stars and not much to see. The real show, the empty in between. Go buy yourself a new sun. No give backs. You break, you buy. To parent is to second guess each misspent breath. Shout at the empty stars. Like being a parent, the responsibility too much. From the picture window, breath assaulted, to the moonlight trying to break in, to hide from the untrustable stars, their emptiness, legion. The light of dead suns misspent, collapsed under obligation's gravity. The real no-show, in between. More Spicer. Yeah. It's like a game that only I'm playing. I get really excited. It's like a basketball game I'm playing in my own head. This one has the title of this one is Cold Eternal, which is a phrase that comes from another Jack Spicer poem called Imaginary Elegies. It's a series of poems called The Imaginary Elegies, which again, highly recommend. Just go read all of Spicer. His collected is called My Vocabulary Did This to Me, which is rumored to be his last words. He died of things related to alcoholism when he was 40 years old. 40. Yeah. So, and then supposedly his final words were, "My vocabulary did this to me," which is like a pretty heavy thing for a poet who was like a pretty serious academic and was a linguist and was like doing all of this work and like looking at like different dialects throughout like California, just like really intense, and was like very, you know, had a lot of scholarship, but also wrote these like incredibly like tender kind of elemental poems. So the title is called Cold Eternal, a phrase that comes from Imaginary Elegies, and the first line of the poem is a quote from my partner, my better half, Kate, who's not here. So this is for Kate. It's called Cold Eternal. We all walk around slightly wounded and giving away more than an hour, more than sleep, taking the empty out of the sky and giving it to the earth to replace the minerals our survival requires, extracted by capital to near oblivion, as any flippable resource will be. A sham, a one-way street pocked with neglect, collecting plasmatic rain, falling out of a dust bowl sky, a dry socket in God's toothless mouth, stripped by sweet capital and infecting every aspect of our survival, given away to the nothing, the cold, eternal, empty, a scam, a neglect to replace. Okay. So in February, Kate and I lost our cat very suddenly and very horribly, and it was very traumatic. And so that's been tough, especially after we just moved into a new house that we kind of like arranged in large part for our sweet boy. His name was Cusco, and this poem is for him, and it's called Celestial Navigation. The largest ocean in the world is grief. It rests on top of all the other oceans. There is only one ocean, you might say, and you'd be correct. What would it be if we excelled more at recognizing the whole instead of dividing the world into quarters like a lemon? We cannot reassemble after being prepared and portioned for service, a garnish on God's dinner plate. More enhancement, less seasoning. Such hunger cares less about taste and more for the sour blood. Bones and gristle collect on beaches, attracting scavengers to our shores. Grief is the only ocean. Hey, thanks. Pull it together. Okay. Fun things. So, I haven't done much, other than all the things that I just read, I haven't done much writing really in the last like 2.5 years, like I said, for a whole bunch of reasons, some of which I'm aware of and some that I'm not. Hello, nice to see you. Thank you for coming. Like I said, I work in series. Like once I kind of get something going, I can kind of like chase that, and I can kind of plug all the language and anything that's kind of like coming across the bow, and fit it to this thing or this process. And so right when things opened back up after the lockdowns, once like shows come back, I'm a musician first. I started playing drums when I was really young. My mom will tell you begrudgingly, probably holding her ears. Tinnitus, it's real. Yeah, I get a little. But anyway, like, so I was a musician first, and I'm still a musician. I play every day. I really like going to shows. I shouldn't say like, I really love, I need to go to shows. I really like, I love live performance of any kind, particularly music performances and readings like this. And so I started trying to do these like improvised poems at shows at Roztalks. If you don't know Roztalks, and if I get to be the person to introduce you to Jack Spicer, Elizabeth Robinson, and Roztalks all in one day, I've done almighty work. Roztalks is a cafe. It is in Rock Island. I've lived here on and off most of my life. I've been going to shows since before I could drive, and I'm 45. Sounds right? Something like that. We'll call it 45. Sounds nice. They have the most incredible programming of any space any of you have ever heard of around here, and I know this for a fact because I live here and you live here too, and we know the same things. So many of their acts come from all over the world. They do a tremendous amount for the local arts community and putting people on, but they also bring the world here. Many of the acts that come here, when you see their posters, you'll see like Chicago, LA, New York, Montreal, Toronto, Philadelphia, Seattle, Rock Island. You get the idea? Yeah. So if you're not going there, you should go there. The tremendous food, really beautiful people work there and tend to that place and make it very special. And so I started doing this thing where I was trying to do these improvised poems during performances. So if you ever see me at Ross Talks and like people are playing, I'm like in my phone, and you're like, why is he one of those dicks? It's like, I'm writing, I assure you, like I'm on my notes app writing poems real time. And so I've been trying to get like, basically I'm trying to capture a little bit of the performance, but not describe it, because ekphrastic work that only describes, I think, is kind of boring. We can talk about that in a few. And then sort of my experience, because everything you read from every poet or every writer, you're getting some of their experience, right? And then like the environment, so Ross Talks, but also like what's going on out in the world, like in this community and more broadly, and trying to triangulate those things into something that sort of does a little bit of justice to the performer and the performance and the space, and makes a hopefully interesting poem. So I haven't shared a bunch of these. This one's pretty new. I try to edit them pretty lightly because I kind of want them to stay like with that improvised sort of vibe. So this was after a show. The band was called Tegger, and it's a family band, mother, father, daughter, I believe, from South Korea and from Japan. Tegger. The performance was 17 March 2024, and this is called In Silhouette. Fields of water, sky undressed to open, particleized, recombinant innocence, a child with a whistle and simulated wings. Anything can fly with enough harmony. Beneath the rain, the envelopes unseal, decanted and non-flammable, the air, nothing to build, a narrative nor a house. Hiding in a shadow grows solid, becomes the horizon with gasoline eyes, an open throat to the lightning and ground. Beware the imitative, breath held close, an endless pulse takes to feel and follow, push the air to music and the rest piecemeal. Songs fall out of the lonesome, the open sky. I've got a lot of those, so hopefully someday I'll find a good place to share more of those. So shout out to Ben. Love you, Ben. Thank you. Ben runs Ross Talks. You should all know Ben by first name. He's he does a lot for this community. I don't think people quite realize. Next poem I'm going to read is a prose poem. And it's the first poem I've written in a series that I've written all these poems. I'm not going to go into it, but I wrote like a series of prose poems that were all sort of addressed to the nothing, or the nothing is speaking, and they're all sort of like a loose reimagining of the film A Never-Ending Story. If people remember that from 1984, you remember that weird, heartbreaking movie? Yeah. Shaped this guy quite a bit. Watched it a lot, did I not? Yes, I did. Thank you, Mom. And so I took a workshop from a guy named Matthias Valina, who's a really amazing poet, surrealist poet. He does this thing, and if you're writing down recommendations, Dream Delivery Service. You can find him on socials. So he does this thing where he travels around the country, spends about a month in a place, and he writes dreams every day, and you can subscribe and have them mailed to you. Or he drops them off locally, like he rides his bike around super early in the morning and delivers them, among other amazing things that he does. So I took a workshop with him, and it was the poetics of nothing, and I jumped on it because I've been writing these nothing poems for years. Like I have a whole like manuscript of these, or chapbook manuscript of these. So I hadn't written one in a long time, so I took the opportunity and one of the prompts that Matthias gave us, and I wrote this. So I'm going to read this, and I'm going to read a poem from his new book that just came out. So this is The Nothingness Force Field. Not a question of how I enter the world, more a guess at how the world exists without me. How to fill any empty, if not first with an emptiness. Absence as invitation. I am everywhere that cannot be apprehended. The shadow of your hand on the grass. I'm inherent to the structure of matter being made of empty space and potential. Revelation engines the making and the destruction. Slag heaps of something. Particles in orbit suspended in what appears as a solid state. An invisible demolition, implosion of void, a renovated empty, I am what appears. The nothing's got a very large sense of itself, despite being nothing, which is, I think, ironic. And is also the big heavy in the movie that's devouring the world because of a lack of human imagination, which I think is an excellent metaphor for global warming. Take that as you will. So this is Matthias's new book. You should all buy it. It was published by this cool indie press called Big Lux Books. Big Lux publishes a lot of really terrific things. I think they've done at least one of his other books. This book is called Thank You, Terror, and all the poems in it are titled Thank You, Terror. And I'm just going to read the short one right here that's on page 10. Shout out to Matthias. Thank you, man. I love you, man. Appreciate you so much. Thank you, Terror. Break your life and break the pieces into smaller pieces, and break your hands and break your body until you've broken all you know, and kiss the wood still warm from the tree. There is a gap. The war never ended. The dead are alive. Steal the horses from the factory and ride them in brokenness. Your heart is a hatchet, and what is empty will one day not be empty. Matthias, so he read at Spectra a few years ago, and it was a bunch of years ago, I guess, but that was like a real moment. It felt like big time. It was very special. He's a special dude. So Dream Delivery Service, get it for your friends. We've done it. It makes excellent gifts. And also, Matthias, if you ever see this, please come to the Quad Cities and do Dream Delivery Service from here. We'll do awesome things and make it happen. I just putting that out in the world. Here we go. I got 3 more poems, 2 by me and 1 by somebody else. So this last poem of mine, the title comes from a poem by a really terrific poet named Lisa Olstein. If you're not familiar with Lisa Olstein, you should be. She's got, I think, most of her books are on Copper Canyon Press, which is like a really major independent press, primarily of poetry, based in the Pacific Northwest. So I'm going to read my poem with the title borrowed from her poem, and then I'm going to read the poem from which I borrowed. So this poem is called Everything Blooms Coldly, after Lisa Olstein. Spring balks at the bell-clear blue eye of the sun, another pale imitation of a day. The skittering pressure everyone applies to the getting over it, the moving forward. I say, I just moved. No wonder so many of us are wrecks. Outside the world, an aquarium, a fake seafloor, barren but for our detritus. Artificially lit at all times, and we expect to get any sleep. Suddenly breathing underwater, dissolving. This desolation makes my bed and won't answer when I ask when it's leaving. I expect not for some time. It's anyone's guess. I'm not holding my breath. This is the poem that title came from, and this is from a book called Radio Crackling, Radio Gone, which was published 2006 by Copper Canyon Press. This poem is called Dear One Absent This Long While by Lisa Olstein. Thank you, Lisa, if you ever see this. It has been so wet, stones glaze in moss. Everything blooms coldly. I expect you. I thought one night it was you at the base of the drive, you at the foot of the stairs, you in a shiver of light, but each time leaves and wind revealed themselves, the retreating shadow of a fox, daybreak. We expect you, cat and I, bluebirds and I, the stove. In May, we dreamed of wreaths burning on bonfires over which young men and women leapt. June, efforts quietly. I've planted vegetables along each garden wall, so even if spring continues to disappoint, we can say at least the lettuce loved the rain. I have new gloves and a new hoe. I practice eulogies. He was a hawk with white feathered legs. She had the quiet ribs of a salamander crossing the old Pony Post Road. Yours is the name the leaves chatter at the edge of the unrabbited woods. Yeah, Lisa Holstein, Run, Don't Walk. This is my last poem, and I'll read this, and then we can kind of do like some conversation, if that's cool, and we'll give away some chat books. Sound dope? Thank you all again for being here and for listening to all of my sad poems. I hope I didn't bum you all out too much. But having said that, I'm going to read one more poem that is likely to bum you out. It is the second of the two sibling poems called Air, and like the air traffic and all the stuff with Boeing kind of figures in there. Like there's a lot of thinking about like I don't know, capital and how that's not maybe working out, and stuff like that. So, in any event, last poem. This is called Air Traffic. We are mostly made of empty space, and like the clouds, cast terrifying shadows on the earth. Empty shadows ready at the slightest change in air pressure to become a deluge, a rage, to make more empty space to accommodate our great shadows of emptiness. One looks like an elephant. One looks like an assault rifle. One looks like an angry, eyeless face, an expression of empty rage waiting to open fire above us, an open rain. The heaviest of downpours still finds distance between each drop, stretched to streams by speed and force, pressure and gravity. Unlike floating elephants parading down avenues of sky, we don't remember how to find open water to rest near when it's time for us to return our emptiness. We don't remember which of time's lonely frequencies to tune into, disturbed by our listening to the radiant, invisible waves. Lightning-charged air crashing on the shore of an empty ocean. So who wants to talk poetry? For real, like seriously. Like, what are y'all writing? Yeah?
The last point you made with that last poem, sort of like poems designed to bum you out. Do you ever? This will sound like
Not designed to. They just
I
they often
see,
end
that's,
up
That's
doing
my
that.
sort of question,
Yeah.
and I don't mean to sound facetious, but do you ever like write a poem and you're like, I want this to bum someone out? You're
Yeah,
writing a
for
poem
sure,
designed
100%.
to like, or even like alternatively like, I want this poem to just be a happy poem.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, that's a great question. I totally dig where you're coming from. Yeah, I mean, I think I've written poems to try to like, I've definitely written poems to try to like really make people angry. I've definitely written poems to try to offend specific people in specific ways. I mean, I think I like art that's provocative just in general, like across the board. I think if art's, you know, I don't know that it always needs to have like a message and stuff like that, and that might be controversial right now, but I think like art should provoke. And if it provokes sadness, then if that's what it was going for, then great. But like, yeah, I think ideally, like as a writer or an artist, I'd want to be able to like write things to like do, you know, like I want to modulate response as much as I can. You can't really control that so much. We're all just trying, right? It feels mostly like fumbling around in the dark. But yeah, I like that. And like, That's one of the cool things about being in workshop, and like, don't do this unethically, as I have maybe once or twice. But like, you kind of, once you get to know people, you can kind of like, you know how they might respond, and so like trying to like throw something out there like, ooh yeah, I bet this person might really be like, I like that poem. And they maybe don't know why, and that's the best one. Like I've definitely, there's one poem, I can probably never read it in front of an audience, but there's a poem that I wrote when I was in graduate school in Chicago, and Kate read it once and was very upset. It was very abstract, and I'm still sort of unclear why. But we talk about this poem regularly. She does not like it, and not that I want to antagonize my partner, because I don't. I love her very much, and I would be a total wreck without her. But it was just cool to see that response, and it was like very instructive that like, oh yeah, you can do this, and like you can try to like, and so yeah, I think I'm not like, none of these were trying to bum people out, but she, as reading some of these, she's like, kind of a bummer. And I was like, yeah, probably. We have reasons. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm just gonna preface this by saying that I wrote down all the questions I wanted to ask you, and then you answered every single one of them. So I think that goes to your public speaking skills, but was the...
Or my clairvoyance skills.
Yeah.
I don't,
You
either
just
one.
knew.
Maybe both.
Um,
Let's go to the casino and find out.
yeah,
What do you say?
hopefully.
Bet on bulls. Don't do that. No one should bet on this.
Was the elephant parallel to assault rifle thing in the last poem, was that at all a Gus Van Sant reference?
Oh shit! No. I
It is
see.
now.
I'm not disciplined. Normally, I would stand here and be like, "Yeah, that was totally intentional." But, you know, it's the Ghostbusters thing. If somebody asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if somebody asks you if that was intentional in your poem, you just like, you say yes. Play it cool, which I'm not going to do. No, but like now that you say that, like yeah, like talking about the movie Elephant.
Yeah.
Right? No, not at all. I didn't think about that at all. But I know that movie, and that makes a lot of sense. I was just thinking about like cloud shapes, and I like elephants, which is maybe a very unsatisfying answer. But like sometimes you just put things that you like in poems.
It's my headcanon.
And also, I just think they're like, I like elephants because like they do, like some elephants like will like walk hundreds of miles on this, again, you know, facts that bum people out. When it's time for them to move on, they just have this innate, you know, this instinct that they like walk hundreds of miles to the nearest ocean shoreline and just lie down, and that's a wrap. And like, that's pretty beautiful. And there's a whole lot of other cool things about elephants. I'm not gonna try to be like, we're not gonna do like a Sir Richard Attenborough thing or anything like that, or David Attenborough, right? I get my Attenboroughs confused. Anyway, but no, not intentional, but it will be moving forward. Thanks for the connect, good looking out. Hi friends, yeah.
I don't know if one of the themes you were talking about that we were
Excuse me.
hoping to maybe see or feel, there was just beakers full of emptiness, and I love the fact that you were able to fill such an amount of thought and word and music with emptiness. Could you riff on that a second?
I can try. I mean, like, when I saw Matthias's workshop about nothing, like a poetics of nothing, like, it is kind of like, go and look at some of your favorite poets, see how often they write about nothing. Start with Emily Dickinson. If she's one of your favorites, she should be. And you'll see, like, right away, like, how many people are, like, writing and thinking about nothing pretty regularly, which is pretty interesting. And also, like, just, like, the idea of, like, the atom, right? Like we, you know, like if you think about an atomic particle, those are mostly made of empty space. That's Bill Nye the Science Guy now. So like the actual matter that we're all made up of, like what fits in like it's like a handful of dust, right? The T.S. Eliot thing. There's like that sort of relates to like how much actual like physical matter we are. We're mostly just like held in space by like forces, which is trippy to think about, and like a lot. So thinking about like the sort of like physics of that as not a physicist or a science sort of person, and just thinking about like the emotional resonance that has, and just thinking about time and space and distance and how to represent that without leaning on like the same old kind of descriptors. I guess empty is like pretty like tried and true. I shouldn't like toot my own horn, but like, I don't know, it kind of felt right. All of these poems I wrote longhand and then typed them, and I was doing a lot of like reading and like redrafting, like a lot of like more than I usually do, and like doing it kind of fast. And I sort of wasn't paying too much attention to things I was saying over and over again that much, which maybe isn't a great editorial suggestion, you know? It worked for me, I have no idea. But I kind of noticed that that was the thing, and I don't know, I just kind of like kept it. The one poem, I mean, there's a couple where it comes up a lot, and I'm like, yeah, I like harsh juxtapositions. And so like, there's always gotta be something, like, you know, doing something. I don't know. Yeah. And like, you know, having a house that like had 3 people in it and now has 2 people, I consider them people. So that's a pretty big empty space. So that sort of emptiness is sort of presiding over everything in our lives, unfortunately, the last few months. Not to see, bummer, putting people out. But yeah, that's kind of where that's coming from. So, thank you. Yeah.
Did you read the Never Ending Story book?
I have, you know, it's been a long time.
It's like 400 pages.
Yeah, it's a totally, the movie is just like the first half, if
Yeah.
I'm remembering right, and then it like picks up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely saw the movie first, thank you, Mom. Probably also thank you, Dad. I saw a lot of movies with my dad. And something just hit, and I know a lot of people who are kind of around my age for whom that's like very formative, and like the swamps is said. I'm like, I can't. That's just automatic weeping. We gotta not do that. That's not for watching with company. So no, I don't remember the book that well. I have read it, and I know the author of the book, whose name escapes me, like kind of hated the movie. But like he also took the money for the book rights, and so make your own damn movie. Like nobody asked you. Sorry, German
Somebody asked
author
you.
who wrote this great story. Like, I kind of feel like Stephen King will fame it. Like, you know, I don't like The Shining. It's like, well, you like the check that you got, and you're not a film director, so there's a seat and you can have one. So, yeah.
And Stephen King famously made his own version of The Shining, and it was
Not great. Yeah, it's not super great. So like, it's a little easier said than done.
Yeah.
Steve. Yeah. So, but yeah, like I've just kind of, there's this really, more shout out. So there's a really amazing poet that I love. Her name is Lisa Gabbard. She's also a really terrific essayist. She's got a couple of poetry collections on a press called Black Ocean. She wrote this essay, and it's in my mind because I just read it with my students at Ambrose. It's called Big and Slow, and it's sort of, it was published in a magazine that's no longer active called Real Life, but their archive is there. They published some Hanif Abdurraqib, who's like everywhere right now, so if you dig his work, check that out. Which the Big and Slow is basically, it's about like hyper objects and about like, it's sort of about the problem of global warming, and part of that being that it's so big and it's displaced through time and space. So it's happening everywhere all the time, and we can document this by any number of like, you know, with all the data. Like we can track this through ice core samples, we can look at tree sample, there's all these things, right? So we know this is a thing, but because it's happening everywhere all the time, you can't really see it. And this thing about humans is, if we can't see a thing, sort of like, think about most paintings and pictures you see. What do they have? They have frames. We need to put things in frames in order to see them properly. Well, how do you frame something that is so large and happening all the time everywhere? And so it's sort of thinking through like, how do we reimagine this problem maybe in ways that will better animate people to address it? Because it's happening to everybody everywhere, to, you know, to some places in far greater extent than others, and that doesn't help. So I kind of started thinking, I was writing these prose poems, and I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about the film, that the character is the nothing who you never see, who has no speaking parts, but is the force that is sort of like literally devouring the world because of a lack of human imagination. And that seems like a very fitting metaphor for, so like, I've been wanting to go back to those poems because they're pretty good, I think. I got a like chapbook manuscript of them as a finalist for a press, which was cool. Be cooler if they published it, but what are you gonna do? It was nice to be nominated. But yeah, it was so like that. I was really grateful for Matthias's workshop to kind of get me in a space where I could kind of get back into those poems. So I hope I write more of them. There's a bunch of them out. I'm not gonna. I promise no old poems. So no old poems were read, not of mine. But yeah, and also if you haven't seen the Never Ending Story, the 1980, like just get some Kleenex, take some time, get in touch with your inner child and your imagination. And get ready. Yeah, just you'll probably cry. Crying's coming. Folks, yeah. Go ahead.
I appreciate that you write things that you keep saying you're bumming us out, but I think that to provide a space where people talk about things that they're grieving or mourning or contemplating, that isn't just skipping around, and I think that's it's hard to find in America nowadays. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Like, like loneliness is real. You know, like that's a form of emptiness to me. They sound kind of like kin. But like loneliness kills. I mean, like I'm an only child, so like I'm kind of good. I can be on my own. I'm good with like isolation. There's a big difference between like being on your own or having some alone time and being lonely. Lonely will kill you on a long enough timeline with great enough exposure, and so that was kind of another thing that sort of this, you know, people have called it like an epidemic of loneliness in the country, and so like that's a thing that I think about. I know people that are impacted by that in different ways. I'm definitely impacted by that in different ways. So like that's one of those like local, like things that go real fast from like local, like very personal to like very big and very large. Kind of zoom in, zoom out, kind of cinematic feel. And like loneliness is one of those vessels, I think, for that. You know, kind of like the Never Ending Story, and like that thinking about a character and giving it a personality for something that's like engulfing the world all the time. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Cheers. Hey.
So I know you said that you haven't read the book for a really long time, but the second half of the book is essentially, I mean, aside from being a fantasy story, the juxtaposition of the nothingness facing the aftermath of filling it and emptying yourself out creatively. And
I need to read the book, is what he told
yes,
me.
everybody needs to read the book.
Okay. There you go. There you go.
And get the good version.
I was gonna say,
Okay,
do you
the
know,
good
like,
version, the first part, the part about the nothing is in red ink, and then the second part is in green ink, and that's about him finding the emptiness, which he has to fill with his own imagination. And then the first letter of every chapter is this beautiful artwork, and it's 26 chapters long because every chapter
Sure.
starts with the first. So chapter 1 is letter A, chapter 2 is letter B. Buy the book. Anyway.
Yeah, I was struck by this.
I was gonna, do you know if there are like
Yes.
multiple translations of it?
I just
I think there's like, I only know the one, I can't think of the translator's name, which is not a good
Yeah.
look for this guy, but like, yeah, no, that's, yeah, thank you for the reminder. I will go back and,
But, you know, you were saying that empty is so easy to come to, and yet at the same time, you're filling that emptiness. And so, at what point is it really that easy to come back to?
I don't know, that's, you got me. That's how writing this has all felt like, cause like, I don't know, I hadn't felt like I wrote a poem that I cared about in like 3 years. And I'm like one of those people, like I write a draft and it's like pretty quick, like this piques my interest, I wanna work on this. Or it's like, go away. And I'll never go back to it. So like if it doesn't have some kind of like energy, like propelling it forward in the moment, it's pretty much DOA for me. So writing things that kind of felt like that and were kind of feeding into another, like yeah, it definitely did feel like filling a big void. And it's nice, it feels really good. And like the reading rack, like all jokes aside, like reading is kind of how I feel like I got back to a lot of it. You know, like everybody says that, like, oh, writers, you know, like you want to be a good writer, you got to read. Like, no, it's real. There's no escaping it. Like when people tell me like, oh, I like writing, but I don't really read that much. I'm like, you should start before you show anybody anything that you're reading, please, for the sake of all of us. But it really did, and like it helped. Like I'd spent so much time with Spicer, so it was like work that I knew really deeply and really loved and really cared about. But I hadn't spent any time with it much, like attentively in like 10 years at least. So it felt like going back to like an old friend, but like with a whole new bunch of people to talk to about it, who like some of whom didn't really know his stuff, and so like seeing this range of people with like that familiarity and like getting excited about it and kind of arguing with it, and like the way that you do when you read something like this is really cool, but kind of hate this, and like kind of wrestling with all of it. And Elizabeth is just like like just a generous ringleader for these discussions and gave us these wonderful prompts. And I wouldn't have any of these poems for sure without, like I came back from AWP on a Saturday or a Sunday, and that night that workshop started, and 6 days later my cat died. And then so like that's just been, and so yeah, and so that's the sort of like weird, terrible cocktail that make all these poems, I guess. But yeah, the reading has been like everything. So I've been trying to accumulate books. I like bought like as many of Elizabeth's books as I could, like a weirdo. What are you gonna do? She's got a lot of books. Anyway, time to go. Time to wrap it up.
I know I was gonna ask if you read much prose.
Do I read much prose? I read a lot of nonfiction prose. I don't read. I'm pretty terrible with novels. My partner reads more than anybody I know. She listens to books on tape all day while she's at work, working alterations at Von Maur. She reads most of the time at home. She's usually got 2 or 3 books on her phone that she's reading, plus 2 or 3 audiobooks, plus however many hard copy books. And all she reads, for the most part, is fiction. So I feel like I pick up the slack everywhere else. Not that she slacks. Well, I read a lot of nonfiction, a lot of reporting, partly for the teaching, but I like reading craft, I like reading process, I like good reporting that doesn't come from cable television, because it's not there. You can't really get it there. So yeah, and that's just sort of what I'm interested in. I published my first like work of prose earlier this year, which felt like real weird and like exposure. You don't have to clap. So, but like that was cool. That felt like interesting, but also like essay, nonfiction. So, but I like it. I mean, there's like a whole bunch of poets who are like publishing novels, like Kaveh Akbar. People have probably heard of him. He just won a Guggenheim. His first novel just came out. His first books were all books of poems. Philip Williams just put out a book called Hours, like a real epic. I don't know if you might have it here. I don't know. It just came out a couple months ago. He's a poet. A guy named Sam Sachs, who lives out in the Bay Area. I can't remember the name of his novel, but he's got a novel coming out. Fatima Ashgar,
They Are Sisters.
Yes, her novel, and also writes for TV, wrote for Miss Marvel. So like, it's worth getting into poetry jams, because there's a lot of poets getting into the prose game and getting in the TV game, and so you want to know where the future is. I think to a large extent, it's coming out of poetry. We do the most with language. Sorry, y'all. Yeah.
For the poet who published novel, I just wanted to add Wendy Chen. Wendy Chen, she.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. No.
Novel's coming out in May.
There's
they're
Thank you.
Divine Fires.
She's
It's
great.
So good, yes.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the novel, obviously, lacking, but she's a terrific poet. I know her stuff. Yeah. She's great. I think she's got a book on Yes Books, maybe.
Yeah.
That sounds right. Which is another press.
And then she has another one, and she does translation too.
Yeah, right. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's others too. It's like a whole vibe right now. It's crazy. Sorry, fiction writers, or sorry, the poets are coming. Not me. Real poets, they're coming. Anyway, we probably need to.
Up to you.
I'm good. I'll talk poetry all. You'll have to kick me out of here, and we got books to give away too.
Not related to poetry, I just had
That's
to
fine.
ask, what was the one Spike Lee movie you were
Oh, Inside Man. It's like
Inside.
one of the great heist movies of the 21st century. Highly recommend. It's another one of those that Terrence Blanchard did the score for. If you don't know Terry Blanchard, like really like legendary trumpet player, composer. He's done 7 or 8 of Spike Lee's films. I think he just did his first opera.
Oh, wow.
He's phenomenal. He played at the Capitol Theater
He was visiting
way
artist
back.
with Quad City.
Yeah, like 2007.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
right when I first moved here. It was like one of the first shows I went to when I still worked at Quad City Arts. Yeah, he's incredible. Actually, you know what? His drummer played my old drum set
Wow.
because they had it on the writer, and West Music didn't have anything that was quite
Wow.
up to snuff. So
Very cool.
come in and sort him out. He was kind of bagging on it. It wasn't exactly what he wanted, but like it's a garage. We do what we can.
It's better than it would have gotten.
It definitely was that, for sure. But I wasn't gonna say that to him, because he would have thrown a stick through my eye socket or something. Anybody else? Otherwise, you can give away some chat books, yeah?
I appreciate the venue today. Like,
Yeah,
the
very much.
libraries
Thank you
are
again,
super
Claire.
accessible, and I think it's really welcoming to anybody. That's props on that. Also, I was gonna say, have you ever thought of putting like the words on the wall, because while you read them? Because I feel like poetry can be like, it's hard to encounter it first read for anybody.
Yeah.
And for us to be able to sit with the poem with you, like I don't know.
No, I dig that. You know, and like, and it's also very visual. Like I think about like how things look on the page matters, and sort of like for me, it really impacts how I understand it and like how I try to lay things out. Not that I'm always I'm not making shapes or. I don't do a lot of concrete poems or anything, but I do think a lot about space and like every text we read, every page is a visual object, and I think we miss an opportunity when we don't think about that first before we get into like reading it for content. And poetry is a good thing that helps us to remember that, right? Because it's got a visual sort of look and presence, and it doesn't just look like not just paragraphs, but it's not just the normal text that we encounter in like emails and newspapers and things like that. I haven't. I'm thinking about it now. Thank you.
I wrote
But
it
like
down.
the one example that I'm thinking about was at River Readings when Ilya Kaminsky, really terrific Ukrainian poet, very famous award-winning poet. So he is hearing impaired, and he had. He's got kind of a thick accent. If I get any of this wrong, Rebecca, please correct me. And so he had copies of the poems that he was going to read from his book Deaf Republic. Definitely check. It's been out for a few years, but again, Run Don't Walk, Deaf Republic. I think it was published by Grey Wolf. So he had a copy of the poems, so like handouts. But they were, well, I guess when he does other readings, they do like get a projector and they try to like put that up. And so, because I guess he is concerned about the legibility of his voice and everything, and how that literally and figuratively translates. But you're totally right on. I mean, like, that would be a cool thing. And like, or even just like putting them up, some of them, where you could kind of see them, I think would be dope. Thank you for that. Yeah, Rebecca.
Well, on the same subject, I was just thinking, I wasn't at Augie in the fall when they did this, but Augustana has started working with the East Moline Correctional Center and working with inmates there. And I got to teach a poetry class. And we made a book out of the poems that those men wrote. And what happened when the book went out on campus is that the art department asked if they could get permission to frame some of the poems and put them up as an exhibit. And I didn't see it till I got back to campus, but it's pretty amazing to encounter a poem hung as a work of art.
Yeah.
With the line breaks and with a frame around it. It's in an all-white space right now on campus, but everything you guys have been saying about the visual aspect of a poem is true. It's such a different experience to hear it. You get the music, you get the beat, you get all of that, but it's going by your ears pretty fast. And so the thing about being able to see the shape, and as you said, the white space, they just work on so many levels of poems, so.
A bunch of years ago, like 12 years ago, the Figgy did an exhibition where we partnered with them and we enlisted poets and writers to write ekphrastic poems in response to works from their permanent collection. And then they put them up on big vinyl. So they put the works from the collection out, and then they put our works up on the wall next to them, so you could kind of read them. And then they had spaces where you could sort of write your own. You could word bank, or you could write your own poems, kind of encouraging people to like participate along with it. And that was pretty cool. I'm like very into ekphrastic work like that, and so I'm thinking about doing things like that. But thank you for the push. Think about that. I appreciate it. Yeah, Mike.
Some people thought the next big thing in poetry was gonna be a thing called NFT poetry, where you superimpose your poems on some image or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And I think some people were actually trying to sell them like you sell paintings. I don't think it took
Yeah.
off.
It took off for a
The-
minute.
the back-
It was a big bubble
The
for a
back
very
of
short
my-
time.
The back of my book is an NFT poem. It's where
Huh.
I read all the things where
Okay.
there's a thing called the flagger code, because I was a flagger, traffic control, in white letters, and some of them aren't totally clear, but that was kind of, I've got other ones somewhere that librarians always had to superimpose my text on top of the images I chose.
Okay. I'm not, yeah, I know what NFTs are. I didn't know about the sort of intersection between NFTs and poetry, but I hope someone made some money off of that for the 5 minutes. that was a thing. They might have. Say, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't
particularly
know.
the poets.
News to me though. Yeah.
Kind of following up on what you guys said, my wife and I were in a park, I think it might have been in, I'm not sure, in Porto, Portugal, and there was a big, beautiful art festival going on. And in the park, they hung from the trees these white screens with local poets or poetry, and the screens very gently moved in the wind, and amongst the other art objects, there were all these lovely poems all over this park.
Yeah, that's right.
It was really stunning, and it brought it, you didn't have to seek it out, it was there in front, and there were so many people that never came to that park to look at or for poetry that were standing there and reading those things.
Yeah,
It
that's
was
pretty
really
rad.
something.
There's I've heard of like projects like that. I haven't heard of that project specifically, but I've heard a lot of, kind of installation pieces that try to,
I thought the Renaissance Fair or Beaux-Arts or something might wanna consider something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, and there's like a bunch of, so the Academy of American, bring it full circle, Academy of American Poets, who is the outfit that does National Poetry Month. They also do the Poem a Day subscription, where you can get a poem in your email every day, Monday through Friday. They're contemporary poets. Saturday, Sunday, kind of like greatest hits, classics, that kind of stuff. But they have really expanded their Poet Laureate program, and most of those programs are sort of contingent upon whoever the Poet Laureate is of whatever city or state having like some kind of big project. And those projects seem to sort of be trending more toward kind of installations and like public engagement and trying to put poetry out where people sort of can't avoid it, as opposed to like, I'm gonna do an anthology, which is great. I'm not obviously knocking that, but like trying to think about different modes and different vessels and different spaces where you can put the work where people have to engage with it in a different sort of way. And like, that sounds like a really beautiful one. So, if anyone's interested in any of that, the Writing Center is like always game. Like, I can speak for them because that's my job. So if there's cool poetry stuff to do in the Quad Cities, then we get left out. We're not friends. So there you go. How about that? Yeah.
Muscatine Arts Center or whatever had the sidewalk poetry thing. I think
Yeah.
they just completed it.
I've seen that.
You gotta be a Muscatine
Right.
resident to take part in it.
Yeah, people get real. Boy, don't people love their little imaginary lines on maps. Much to the disdain of like the whole species. Anyway, yeah. I'm trying to. There was a cool one that I saw that was like the yard signs that you see for like landscaping and like those awful like politician signs and all that terribleness. But they like turn them into poems, which is pretty great because I think like you see it from a distance, and you're like, oh, this advertising trash, whatever. And it's like, oh wait, no, this is like poetry. This is like pretty cool. And so like I like the way that sort of like plays with expectation. Yeah, I think actually Sean Doherty did a project like that. I can't remember. Too many poetry projects, too many poets. Not too many poets, a lot of poets. Too many to keep up with. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something similar to that. I just got back from DC a couple weeks ago.
Oh, dope.
And the little politician signs. There's a bunch of those around the city of all of like local writers, and there were a bunch of haikus about like the city itself.
Oh, dope.
Which was
Yeah.
really, really cool thing to see.
Which is like the cool thing if you're gonna do like it's only for these people, this border, which I get, whatever, funding impacts all that, sure, but like make it about the space somehow. Like Spicer was like very about. He was hyper local. All of his books were published in the Bay Area. There was a time that he and some other people in his circle ran a magazine, a literary magazine. I think it was called J. And the PO box, like where you would send your submissions or whatever, was in a bar. And so they got a submission one time from New York. Elizabeth told me the story. Elizabeth Robinson told me the story. And so they got a submission from somewhere in New York, and like the artist who did like a lot of the covers and everything was like, well, what do we do with this? And I'm like, tell them to fuck off. You don't want their poems, send it back. And so like, which is maybe like a little tough, and like that feels kind of apropos for the Quad Cities in a lot of ways that we don't need to get into right now. But I think a lot of people would pretend otherwise. I'm not going to, because I like truth. I think that's sort of like being like really dedicated and like celebrating the low B, like, and like I'm in this space and we're gonna make this space as cool as we can and do as much as we can. Like, if you're gonna be local, be about that and try to be inclusive with it, I think. So that's a cool project. Haiku is like, it's so, that's tough. If you're thinking about writing haiku, like maybe read a lot first. Like a lot. Like if you want Rex, come see me after and I'll try to steer you in a direction that will probably be illuminating for you. And better for anyone who reads your haiku. Just saying. Yeah.
What was your favorite piece that you read tonight?
One that I didn't write. I don't know.
No, of your own.
I don't have favorites.
You made it too easy.
What?
You made the question too easy.
They're all cousins I see at holidays. Whichever one gets published first. How about that? Whichever one gets published first, that'll be my favorite. I don't know which one that is. Only a few of them are out. So
That's you selling out. Come on, what's your favorite?
I literally don't have one. I mean, I like literally it would be one of the poems that I read by somebody else. Like, I know, but it is like the honest answer though. I understand. I don't know. I love those poets. So part of what was cool about this was knowing that I wasn't just going to read my own poems. It's a lot of time and space to take up with just your stuff. I'll let you know when I have one. Fair? I really don't. I don't think about. My favorite poem is the next poem that I haven't written yet. That's the one I'm most interested in. Once they're done, they're just sort of like, send out, hopefully it finds a home. If somebody likes it, that's neat, but I'm done, so like, work is over. New poem. That's the thing, you want the next poem. If you feel like you got the next poem coming, then there's hope. When it's no poems coming, that's maybe okay for like a few months, but after like 2 years, it gets to be like, well, plays with your head. Yeah.
Don't you have certain poems though that you write and stay interested in? You know, like you're saying, certain ones it's like, okay, I'm done, it's on its way, but that you keep going back to, even though it's yours and you wrote it and you know what it's about. Really?
Not really.
I feel like I hate everything I write, like right when it's done.
I mean, there's a couple that I've written for people that I hope like are meaningful to them in a way that lasts, but like, that's more about them and there's like how I feel. I wouldn't want to tell them how I feel about those poems because I wouldn't want to color how they might feel about it. You know, because that might bum them out. Let's see, on brand, bummer. But no, not really. The ones that have been like anthologized and stuff like that, that's cool to see like things have life, but that's like an external.
Yeah.
That's not writing the poem or like, oh, I feel this way. It's like, oh, someone liked that enough to like give it more life. So I like those people more than I like those poems. How about that? It's funny, at AWP, we sat next to one of those people, this really amazing journal that is published by Butler University in Indianapolis, I think. And the journal's called Booth. And every few years they do like a big anthology of some of their best work. And I was in that anthology with another local poet, Aubrey Jane Ryan, who's really fantastic. I know a lot of you know, so I get to shout out more poets. Thank you for that. But no, I don't feel any certain way about them. Like I said, I just hope they keep coming. Because they don't, always. And that sucks. Anyway, let's give away some books. Thank you all for like the generous You gotta do this, because I can't use the word untrustable multiple times in one reading and do anything that anyone would expect the level of trust for.
But it's also, there's no name.
No, it's you read numbers.
Okay.
That's how this works. You've never done this before?
No. I'm saying there's no reason for you to not do it. It's not like you're looking at them and being like,
No, I get-
my favorite person.
That's fair, yeah.
What?
I get it. Read the number.
701? That's the last three?
Probably.
Okay.
That's real weird.
Some people left, so.
Yeah, maybe not that many.
Well, I mean, you drew a bad one. Draw a bad one. I'm
You
just-
can do this. 742.
Yeah.
She's win!
Yeah, thank you. Keep going, I don't wanna take any of these home. I got more of where that came from, apparently.
734.
Score.
Nice.
But-
Joe.
Oh, Joe, well done. Yeah, but.
Probably end the recording.
Yeah, cheers.
So the first one is that, was it, what was the number? Just-
Locally printed at Quad City
701?
Press.
It's 01. No.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll do
I'm just
that.
gonna, goodbye, friends.